I sat perfectly still in the plush, oversized leather chair of a mahogany-paneled conference room, the faint scent of lemon polish and expensive espresso hanging in the air. Across the expansive glass table, my father's face was a violent shade of purple. He slammed his fist down so hard that the crystal water glasses rattled against their coasters. Beside him, my mother was hyperventilating, her hands clawing at her designer purse, while my younger sister, Chloe, stared at me with wide, horrified eyes, looking as though she had just seen a ghost. In a way, she had. Exactly 8 months ago, in the driveway of the house I grew up in, my father had looked me dead in the eye and told me I was no longer his son. He had told me I was dead to him. But now, as the senior restructuring partner of the most ruthless private equity firm in the state slid a stack of foreclosure documents across the table, my parents were slowly realizing that the dead man they had thrown away was the only person standing between them and absolute financial ruin. To understand how my family ended up begging for their survival at my feet, you have to understand the nightmare I was born into. For as long as I can remember, the universe inside my parents' house revolved around a single, blinding sun, my younger sister, Chloe. I was just the dark, empty space that surrounded her. The dynamic wasn't just about favoritism, it was about absolute worship. Chloe was the golden child, a title she secured simply by being loud, demanding, and conventionally pretty. If Chloe wanted something, the earth had to be moved to get it for her. If I needed something, it was an inconvenience, a burden, a test of my resilience. When Chloe turned 16, my parents bought her a brand new convertible, citing that she needed a safe, reliable vehicle to get to her cheerleading practices. When I turned 16, I was handed a bus schedule and told that if I wanted to attend my after-school robotics club, I had better find a job to pay for the bus fare. I spent my high school years working agonizingly long shifts at a greasy diner, smelling like stale fries and bleach, while my family took weekend trips to the lake without me. My parents' philosophy was simple and cruel. Mark is tough, he can handle the struggle. Chloe is delicate, she needs to be nurtured. They mistook my silence for compliance. They thought I was a passive, unremarkable workhorse who would eventually settle into a mediocre life. They had no idea that the neglect I suffered was the exact fuel I needed to build an empire. While they were busy funding Chloe's entirely useless degree in event management, which consisted mostly of her partying in a sorority house on their dime, I was fighting tooth and nail through a double major in finance and economics on a full academic scholarship. I didn't tell them about my grades. I didn't tell them about my internships. I knew that if I showed them any sign of success, they would somehow find a way to claim it for themselves, or worse, siphon it off for Chloe. When I graduated, I landed a junior analyst position at a top-tier asset management firm. Over the next 6 years, I worked like a machine. I lived in a tiny, sparsely furnished apartment, ate cheap takeout, and poured every ounce of my energy into mastering the market. I climbed the corporate ladder with a quiet, terrifying speed. I transitioned into distressed debt acquisition, handling portfolios worth tens of millions of dollars. By the time I was 28, I was a managing director. I wore custom suits, drove a luxury sedan, and had a net worth that would have made my father's jaw unhinge. But to my family, I was still just Mark, the bank clerk. I never corrected them when they assumed I was counting pennies behind a teller window. I preferred to remain invisible. It was safer that way. The illusion of our peaceful, distant relationship shattered entirely when Chloe got engaged. The man she chose was a flashy, arrogant, aspiring entrepreneur named Brody. Brody drove a leased sports car he couldn't afford and talked constantly about his crypto investments, which were entirely non-existent. My parents, predictably, thought he was the next Elon Musk. They were utterly blinded by his smooth talking and the promise of elite social status. A month after the engagement, my parents summoned me to their house for a mandatory family dinner. I walked into the house with a knot in my stomach. The dining room table was set with the good china, a feast of roasted lamb and expensive wine laid out. Chloe was sitting next to Brody, flashing a diamond ring that looked entirely too large to be real. My mother was practically vibrating with excitement, while my father poured heavy glasses of wine. "Mark, we have incredible news," my father announced, not even waiting for me to sit down. "Chloe and Brody have finally selected a venue for the wedding. They're booking the Grand Conservatory. It's going to be the event of the decade." "That's great," I said, keeping my voice neutral. Congratulations. My mother leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with a strange, frantic intensity. It is great, but as you know, giving your sister the wedding she deserves is going to require a significant investment. Brody is currently tying up all his capital in a massive tech launch, so your father and I are covering the wedding costs to help the kids out. Okay, I replied, taking a sip of water. I'm not sure why this requires a mandatory dinner, though. My father cleared his throat, his demeanor instantly shifting from celebratory to strictly business. The total costs of the wedding, the floral arrangements, the catering, and the 2-week honeymoon in Bora Bora comes out to roughly $150,000. I almost choked on my water. $150,000? Dad, you run a regional plumbing supply company. You don't have that kind of liquid cash lying around. We know that, Mark, my mother snapped, annoyed by my logic. That is exactly why you are here. We know you live very frugally. You've been working at that bank for years, and you never go on vacation. You don't even have a girlfriend. You must have a significant amount of savings. The room went dead silent. I stared at them, the sheer audacity of the setup washing over me. Are you asking me for money? Chloe scoffed, rolling her eyes and leaning her head on Brody's shoulder. We're not asking for a handout, Mark. It's a loan. Brody is going to pay you back the second his startup goes public. Brody flashed a greasy smile. Guaranteed return on investment, bro. You're practically family. I'll even throw in some equity. I looked at my father, waiting for the punchline, waiting for someone to laugh, but his face was completely serious. We need you to take out a personal loan, Mark. You have good credit. If you leverage your apartment and drain your savings, you can cover $80,000. Your mother and I will take a second mortgage on the house to cover the rest. You want me to take out an $80,000 loan to pay for flowers and a vacation for my sister? I asked, my voice rising in pitch, incredulity bleeding into every syllable. You want me to go into crippling debt so Brody can play pretend millionaire? My father slammed his hand on the table. Do not disrespect Brody in this house. This is about family. Your sister has supported you your entire life. Supported me? I yelled, finally snapping. When has she ever supported me? You bought her a car, you paid for her degree, you practically spoon-fed her every opportunity in the world. I paid for my own clothes since I was 14. I paid my own tuition. I have never asked you for a single dime, and now you want me to bankrupt myself for a party? My mother burst into theatrical, sobbing tears, burying her face in her hands. How can you be so selfish? We gave you life. We put a roof over your head. This is your sister's special day, and you are trying to ruin it because you're jealous. I'm not jealous, Mom. I'm financially literate. I shot back, standing up from the table. I'm not giving you a cent, not one single penny. And if you have half a brain, you won't take out a second mortgage for this circus. Chloe stood up, her face twisted in a vicious sneer. You are pathetic, Mark. You've always been pathetic. You're just a miserable, lonely loser who sits in a cubicle all day. You can't stand to see me happy because your life is a complete joke. My life is my own, I said coldly, which is more than you can say. Good luck with the wedding. I turned and walked toward the front door. I could hear my father's heavy footsteps stomping behind me. As I grabbed the doorknob, he grabbed me by the shoulder and spun me around. His eyes were burning with a hatred that I had never fully seen before. It wasn't just anger, it was absolute disgust. If you walk out that door tonight, you are no longer my son, he snarled, his voice trembling with rage. You are a selfish, ungrateful parasite. If you don't help this family when we need you, you can consider yourself completely cut off. You are dead to us, Mark. Do you hear me? Dead. I stared into the eyes of the man who was supposed to protect me. The man who was supposed to be my father, and I felt nothing but a cold, hollow emptiness. Consider me buried, I whispered. I walked out of the house, got into my car, and drove away. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt a profound, overwhelming sense of liberation. The invisible chains that had bound me to their toxic approval were finally broken. Over the next few weeks, the smear campaign was brutal. My extended family bombarded my phone with vile text messages, calling me a sociopath, a miser, and a traitor. My aunts and uncles accused me of hoarding wealth and trying to destroy my parents' marriage. I didn't respond to a single message. I simply changed my phone number, moved to a highly secure luxury penthouse downtown, and completely vanished from their world. For nearly a year, I lived my life in total peace. I closed massive deals, expanded my firm's portfolio, and enjoyed the quiet comfort of my success. I assumed I would never see my family again, but fate has a remarkably wicked sense of humor. It was a rainy Tuesday morning when the file landed on my desk. I was reviewing a newly acquired bundle of distressed commercial debt that my firm had bought for pennies on the dollar from a regional bank. I was scanning through the lists of defaulting businesses, preparing to initiate aggressive restructuring or liquidation protocols. And then, I saw the name. Miller Plumbing and Hardware Supply. My breath hitched. I pulled up the detailed financial history of the company. It was my father's business, the business my grandfather had started. I dug deeper into the ledgers, and the story unfolded like a tragic, inevitable car crash. 8 months ago, right around the time of Chloe's wedding, my father had taken out a massive, predatory commercial loan against the business. He had used the company's inventory, the warehouse property, and even the delivery trucks as collateral to secure a highly risky line of credit. The funds hadn't gone into the business. They had been withdrawn in massive chunks to pay for catering companies, high-end florists, travel agencies, and most sickeningly, a $50,000 wire transfer to a defunct LLC registered in Brody's name. My father had literally bet his entire livelihood, his employees' jobs, and his family legacy on a wedding and a con artist. And he had lost. The business had bled cash for 6 months, defaulting on 3 consecutive payments. The original bank had panicked and sold the toxic debt to my private equity firm. I leaned back in my leather office chair and stared at the ceiling. I held the absolute power to liquidate my father's entire life. I could foreclose on the warehouse, seize the assets, and leave him with nothing but a mountain of personal debt. I picked up my desk phone and dialed our senior legal counsel, a brilliant, ruthless shark named Harrison. "Harrison," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I have a file here for Miller Plumbing and Hardware. The debtors are in severe default. I want to initiate the foreclosure and asset seizure process immediately. Schedule a mandatory restructuring meeting with the guarantors for this Friday. Have them come to our downtown office." "Understood, Mark," Harrison replied. "Do you want me to handle the meeting, or are you stepping in?" "Oh, I'll be there," I smiled, a dark, satisfying thrill coursing through my veins. I wouldn't miss this for the world. Which brings me back to the mahogany-paneled conference room. My parents and Chloe had arrived 20 minutes early, dressed in what they clearly thought was power attire. My father was wearing an ill-fitting suit, sweating profusely, trying to look like a confident businessman. My mother was clutching her pearls, and Chloe looked completely bored, tapping away on her smartphone, utterly disconnected from the reality that her lifestyle was about to evaporate. I stood in the adjacent observation room, watching them through the tinted glass as Harrison entered the conference room. He set a massive stack of legal documents on the table. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller," Harrison began, his voice devoid of any warmth. "I am the senior legal counsel for Vanguard Capital. As you are aware, your commercial loans have been in default for over 90 days. Vanguard has acquired your debt portfolio, and we are here today to discuss the immediate liquidation of your business assets." My father's face instantly paled. "Liquidation? Now hold on a minute. We just hit a rough patch. The economy is slow. I just need a 6-month extension. I can get the payments back on track. My son-in-law is about to close a massive tech deal, and we will pay you back in full." Harrison didn't even blink. "Mr. Miller, your son-in-law's fictional tech deal is not recognized as collateral by this institution. You leveraged your family business to fund personal, non-recoverable expenses. The business is mathematically insolvent. We are seizing the warehouse, the inventory, and the commercial property." My mother gasped, tears springing to her eyes. "You can't do this. That business has been in our family for 3 generations. It's all we have. We'll be homeless." Chloe finally looked up from her phone, her expression shifting from bored to panicked. Wait, if they take the business, who's going to pay the mortgage on Brody and my townhouse? You guys promised you would cover it until Brody's launch. Even in the face of total ruin, she only cared about herself. My father slammed his hands on the table, trying to muster some false authority. I demand to speak to the person in charge. I want to speak to the senior partner. You are just a lawyer. I want to speak to the man who owns this debt. I will reason with him man to man. Harrison paused, adjusting his glasses. He looked toward the door that led to the observation room. The managing director in charge of your portfolio is actually here today. He has personally overseen your file. If you insist, I will bring him in. Bring him in, my father barked, crossing his arms, puffing out his chest. I'll make him understand. I took a deep breath, smoothed the lapels of my tailored three-piece suit, and opened the door. The heavy wooden door clicked shut behind me. I walked slowly across the thick carpet, the sound of my expensive leather shoes echoing in the silent room. I didn't say a word. I just walked around the massive glass table and stood right next to Harrison, looking down at the three people who had made my life a living hell. The reaction was something out of a psychological thriller. For 5 seconds, nobody breathed. My father's eyes widened to the point where I thought they might actually fall out of his skull. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. My mother dropped her designer purse onto the floor, the contents spilling out, completely ignored. Chloe physically recoiled in her chair, pressing herself against the backrest as if a bomb had just been dropped in the room. "Hello, Dad," I said, my voice smooth, calm, and terrifyingly polite. "You wanted to speak to the man who owns your debt?" "Mark?" My father choked out, his voice cracking, sounding like a terrified child. What are you doing here? How did you get in here? Are you fetching coffee for these people?" Harrison let out a sharp, genuine laugh. "Fetching coffee? Mr. Miller, Mark is the managing director of Vanguard Capital's Distressed Asset Division. He's one of the highest-ranking executives in this building. He personally approved the acquisition of your debt." The color rapidly drained from my father's face, leaving him looking like a sick, gray ghost. He looked at my suit, my watch, the absolute authority in my posture, and the reality of the situation finally crashed down on him. The bank clerk he had mocked, the son he had discarded, was the grim reaper of his financial existence. "No," my mother whispered, shaking her head violently in denial. "No, this is a trick. Mark doesn't have money. Mark is just a clerk. He lives in a tiny apartment." "I haven't lived in that apartment for 6 years, Mom," I replied, pulling out the plush leather chair at the head of the table and sitting down. I folded my hands perfectly in front of me. "I've been building my career while you were busy building Chloe's ego, and it seems that while I was accumulating capital, you were busy squandering yours on a fake wedding and a fraudulent son-in-law." Chloe stood up, her face flushed with frantic rage. "You did this on purpose! You bought our debt just to ruin us! You psychotic freak! You planned this!" "Sit down, Chloe," I commanded. I didn't yell. I didn't raise my voice. I spoke with the icy authority of a man who held the keys to her survival, and the tone forced her back into her seat instantly. "I didn't plan anything," I continued, looking directly at my father. "I didn't force you to take out a predatory loan. I didn't force you to spend $150,000 on a party you couldn't afford. You made those choices. You walked into the casino, put your entire life on black, and you lost. The fact that the debt ended up on my desk is just a beautiful coincidence." My father's arrogant facade completely crumbled. The chest puffing stopped. His shoulders slumped, and he suddenly looked 20 years older. He leaned forward, clasping his hands together in a desperate posture of prayer. "Mark, son," my father pleaded, tears actively welling in his eyes. "Please, I'm begging you. You can't do this. That business is our life. It's your legacy, too. We made a mistake. I made a mistake. We got caught up in the excitement of the wedding, and Brody lied to us. He took the money and lost it all on some crypto scam. We are broke, Mark. If you take the business, we have nothing. We will lose the house." "We're family, Marky," my mother sobbed, reaching a trembling hand across the table, trying to touch my sleeve. "I know we haven't always been fair, but we love you. You have to save us. You have all this power, all this money. You can just forgive the loan. Please, baby, forgive the loan." Even Chloe started crying, realizing that her free ride was permanently over. "Mark, please. Brody is going to leave me if the money stops. You can't let my marriage fall apart." I looked at the three of them. I looked at the tears, the begging, the desperate manipulation. 8 months ago, I might have felt a twinge of pity. I might have felt the old pathetic urge to be the good son and save them. But standing in that driveway, listening to my father disown me to protect his spoiled daughter, had permanently burned that part of my soul away. I slowly pushed my chair back and stood up. I picked up the heavy stack of foreclosure documents and tapped them against the glass table to straighten the edges. "Forgive the loan?" I asked, looking down at my mother. "Save the family?" I looked at my father, locking eyes with him, making sure he saw nothing but absolute unbreakable resolve. "I'd love to help you," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that echoed in the silence of the room. "But unfortunately, I can't." "Why?" my father cried out, genuine terror gripping his face. "Why can't you?" I leaned down, resting my hands on the table, bringing my face inches from his. "Because I'm dead, remember?" The words hit him like a physical blow. He physically recoiled, burying his face in his hands, letting out a gut-wrenching sob. My mother wailed, a loud, ugly sound of pure despair, realizing that her own toxic words had sealed her fate. "You are a monster!" Chloe screamed, standing up and throwing her water glass at the wall. It shattered into 100 pieces, much like her perfect little life. I didn't even flinch. I turned to my lawyer. "Harrison, they have 48 hours to vacate the commercial premises before the locks are changed. Proceed with the immediate liquidation of all assets. Do not offer them a settlement. Take everything." "Understood, Mark," Harrison said, writing a note on his legal pad. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't gloat anymore. I simply turned around and walked out of the conference room, leaving the door open behind me so the entire office could hear the wailing and the screaming of the family that had tried to throw me away. The fallout was spectacular and entirely public. Without the business revenue, my parents defaulted on their mortgage within 3 months. The bank foreclosed on my childhood home. They were forced to move into a tiny, run-down apartment on the outskirts of the city. Brody, realizing the bank of mom and dad had permanently closed, filed for divorce and vanished into the wind, leaving Chloe with a mountain of credit card debt she had racked up under her own name. She currently works at a kiosk in the mall, selling cheap phone cases, complaining to anyone who will listen about how her rich brother ruined her life. I hear about them sometimes through the grapevine, from extended relatives who suddenly realized I was the good guy all along and tried to worm their way back into my good graces. I blocked them all. I walked out of that law office and never looked back. I had spent my entire youth trying to prove my worth to people who were determined to misunderstand me. I thought that saving them from their own ruin might bring me some kind of twisted satisfaction, but in the end, the greatest revenge wasn't destroying them. The greatest revenge was letting them destroy themselves, while I continued to build an empire they would never, ever be allowed to enter.